Today on the Voices for Change Film Club interview series, the very first one, we are interviewing Leah Manasseh. You are based, Leah, in Dubai now. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us at Women's Voices.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And we're interviewing you today about your film, which is on our film collection online, I Bleed, which is a brilliant film about speaking about your first period with your family and exploring that. It's basically an hour into a project that it took a couple of years for you to get done, correct?
Yeah. It took 2 years. 2 years in the making, but I've had the idea, I would say I had the idea since maybe 15 years. It was always something I felt I wanted to talk about and I wanted to create a film about, but I did it in 2 years.
So thank you so much for speaking to us about this. And for those of you who have not seen I Bleed, we're going to have Leah explain to us a little bit about this film. So Leah, tell us a little bit about the process of this story. Obviously, it's your story, so you didn't have to go out there and discover some story outside, right? It's your story. You're the main subject in it. Tell us a little bit about what made you want to tell the story on film.
To be honest, I started this film thinking that I was going to do a film not related to me. I thought I was going to create a collective of stories of women and their first period. And that's how the project started. So I started out filming as many women as I could and talking about their first period. Similar words started coming out, like the words taboo, the word shame, something about the relationship with their mothers. And I took a step back and I thought, okay, there's something that I needed to explore more. So it was not just going to be a film collecting stories about women's first period. But at one point I was like, Mom, I need more people to be part of this interview collection that I'm doing. And I asked my mother, and my mother sat there and she said that she couldn't remember her first period. My mom and I have a very close relationship, so we talk about everything. And I couldn't comprehend how my mother didn't, first of all, remember her first period, right? So it was it was shocking. My first period was very traumatic, the way I lived my first period. And I think it kind of shaped the way I lived my womanhood. And my mother played a big part in that first period. So I started asking her questions. And at one point, I didn't even know what my story was about, to be honest. And I didn't want it to make it personal initially. But then I thought, the only way I could tell the story if I could link it back to me and my mother. And that's the direction that I took for I Bleed, much more of a personal story, linking back to my mother, linking back to her Lebanese heritage, linking back to the situation of women in the Middle East as well, because, my parents are from Lebanon. So I wanted to bring that story as well forward somehow.
And we do see in the film, so even though you and your mother are the main characters, we do see other characters come in. We see in the desert, you asked, you're like, do you care about the cycle that I'm realizing, this is where I had my first period and now I'm talking about it and making a film about it. And somebody was making eggs or something and you
My
asked,
husband.
Your husband, okay.
Yeah, my husband. Okay.
And he's like, I care about boiling my eggs right now.
Yeah. So my husband was a huge part of the whole process and the filmmaking, because he helped me when I lost my mind and I didn't know what the story was, because he works in innovation. So he's very structured and he does all these mind maps. And he really helped me into creating a mind map of my film at the end, once I had the billion hours of footage that I felt like I was swimming in. The beauty of this journey, because I felt this film is a testament to the journey that I went, was really, I felt that, first of all, my relationship with my period changed, right? Because of the knowledge that I gained, and knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. I also, I don't want to say forgave my mother, but made peace with my mother. It allowed me to kind of reconcile the hurt that I experienced with my first period, with my relationship with my mother. So it kind of, it was a kind of a 2-year therapy program for me, more than anything. you know.
I'm gonna come back to that a little in just a little bit because I really want to talk a little bit more about that process. I think it's super beautiful. And I want to know if like was something that began prior to the filmmaking or if it happened just within the filmmaking. But before we get into that, I'd love for you to talk to me a little bit about um and this could be a realization that maybe you got during the filmmaking, or it's what maybe ignited it to tell your story on screen. Your family's from Lebanon, you live in Dubai, the Middle East, and it is very taboo there. And I know that in a lot of cultures, it's taboo to speak about this. Globally speaking, why do you think that this is a very important subject to talk about, our first period? And why do you
Because
think
it's still
this
taboo.
for,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, you know, that most, like, when I first pitched that project and I was like just talking about it to like some women in the US, they were like, I don't know why you're making a film about periods. They're not taboo here. We talk about them freely. But then, like, the truth is, when you scratch beyond the surface, like the taboo is still there. When I asked the same lady, hey, you want to be part of my, I don't want to talk about this in front of the camera. Why? Like, wouldn't you talk about how, if I would interview you about your cold, wouldn't you feel comfortable, or your COVID experience, wouldn't you want to talk about it? So there's still quite a lot of layers taboo, but I think like in the Middle East, unlike the Western world, when you have a taboo, it's like fully present. They own their taboo, right? Like, so they really own the taboo. There's not like, they don't kind of like try to make it look like there's no taboo. The taboo is there, and you deal with it. In the West, I feel
it's Aib, right? Is that the
hide, yeah, shh,
Aib?
yeah, everything is hide. Like, we don't talk about it. Sex, shh, no, nobody has, like, you know what I mean? But in the West, I feel the taboo is still there, but it's just, you know, it's camouflaged under this acceptance. But if you go beneath the surface, the taboo is definitely totally still present, you know. And the taboo also, like, you know, when we talk about the taboo about the period, like, even brands are still living up to, like, are still kind of using that taboo to their own benefit, right? Always plus, right? They still say like that when you buy a pad, this pad will protect you. Protect me from what? Like, from what? From a leak. And what if I leak? Like, what if I leak? What, like, you know what I mean? Why should I feel so embarrassed to that people are gonna know that I have my period? Like, you know what I mean? Or like, this pad is gonna remove the scent. Who said that blood smells? You know, so they really feed off the taboo. And actually, one of the person that I interviewed called Chris Bobel, so she's I think she was like the founder of the Menstruation Association in North America. And she talks about the taboo that exists very clearly, and like, you know, and how capitalism really feeds off the taboo, you know. And I really, like, she really opened my mind to this whole idea how our bodies are being used to feed this capitalistic machine somehow, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. So many codes. You're right. With the whole marketing and the advertising with the product.
Yeah,
I know that in the US, at least, there was a big pushback on taxes for feminine products, right? Like, why should that be taxed?
right.
You
And
know,
why is the blood blue in advertising? Like, no, do you bleed
what is
blue?
that?
Whatever is on my pad is not blue. Never been. I've checked. Like, you know, never been blue. Never saw anything blue on my pad. You know what I mean? Like,
Never noticed that. I have to go look back at an advertisement.
I mean, if it was and the other thing is like the whole medication of menstruation is another problem, right? Like, you know, the way we medicate our periods, we don't want our periods to exist. We don't, like, you know, we stopped relating to our period as like being an indicator of our health, right? So we medicate it. If you have pain, you medicate it. If your cycle is short, you medicate it. I just feel like the over medicalization of our period is also a problem in this way of looking at a woman's body in general, which is like the result of patriarchy and capitalism. That's what happens when they go hand in hand. We become a commodity and our body becomes a commodity. Maybe the film doesn't, like, the personal film doesn't talk about these things so clearly, but the editorial one does. and I'll send it. But I still
Where
like,
can people find that editorial
it's
version?
on Vimeo, but you know, I still have to buy the rights for the stock footage. Like I still need to raise funds to get to be able to buy the rights for the stock footage. But I've showcased it in some women's circles here just to raise awareness, and like for girls as well. Because at the end, like, you know, I feel like when you do work on documentaries like that, but even through my personal journey film, like my objective is to raise awareness and to empower people through knowledge, right? Because once you have knowledge, you have power. Once you have power, you can take better decisions about your body.
Tell us a little bit, going back to the process of making this film. This is obviously very the personal one, right? These 2 years. So you're a producer, you're a storyteller. As storytellers, most of the time we tell other people's stories, right? Tell us a little bit about how different the process was telling your own stories and doing the interviews that were a lot more personal. I mean, this is your mother, this is your husband, this is your stepdaughter, right? And talking about your period, something so taboo. So tell us the difference as far as process goes with setting up those interviews, right? Like when you set up an interview with someone else, it's like, okay, at this time, at this place, we're going to do an interview. But when you live with someone or you know, it's like something that they're just like, oh, why do I have to talk about this? And that's what you want to get on film. Like, tell us a little bit about the process of telling such a personal story on screen.
I was lucky, you know, I was lucky. I feel that I was lucky because both my mother, my husband, and my stepdaughter were very engaged in helping me. Like they really, I felt like they really wanted to help me. My mother mainly would be willing to go out of her way, like even like pushing her sister to be part of the film. Her initial reaction was like, why am I making a film about a topic like this when there are so many more interesting things to make a film about? um but I think she understood that I needed to make that film, right? So I feel like, you know, I feel when people understand that you need to make that film, not that just you want, but you need to get it out, they kind of support you. And I felt like I was supported. Like, I don't know if I'm lucky, but I felt that I was supported. So I never had problem with access. I never had my mother, like we did argue once over an interview, but like because like she was not being natural. You know what I mean? Or she didn't feel like doing it. I don't remember actually the details, but all in all, like if I recall the experience and or the process of interviewing people that are close, I think it was actually an advantage rather than a negative part of the storytelling process.
I'll tell you that from an outsider's perspective, I really felt lucky to, it felt like a fly in the wall because your mother was very much like, I don't care. Why do you talk about this? You care about this too much. For you to have gotten that on camera, I think is brilliant. And it felt very natural from her part, kind of, because you know, I can imagine, at least especially in cultures where this is very taboo for people to be like, I don't care and don't film me saying that, you know?
Yeah.
So it did feel pretty natural from watching it from an outsider perspective.
And I guess they're used to seeing me with a camera, right? So I'm always like usually filming, like I'm always with my video camera filming. So it's not like all of a sudden Leah got her camera out and started film. Okay, it was like a different camera than I usually use to do my home videos, but you know.
So what kind of advice would you give filmmakers who maybe for the first time are going to tell a personal story on camera, or are going to interview their own family? What would be your biggest piece of advice for them?
I would say you have to trust the journey, you know, and I think you have to go with an open mind and trust that you're gonna find your story, right? I think you can't go with an idea of what you're gonna tell, like what story is gonna come out of these interviews, right? Because also like mainly when it's your parent or your mother or like someone with whom you're close, you might go there thinking that you're gonna do this specific interview, but because you have that relationship with that person, that interview can, and I think it can happen with anybody, but with your someone you're close, they can tend to reveal things that they might not have if the camera was not there, because they maybe see the camera as a therapy for them as well. I think the camera becomes like that bridge between you and your family member in a weird way. I studied drama therapy, and we would use puppets, and puppets like as a way to express emotions, right? So instead of me expressing my emotion, I would use the puppet to express my emotion. And I think the camera becomes that puppet, you know. So my mother would use the camera to express her emotions to me, and I'm the one receiving, but there's that camera between us that becomes, that protects.
It protects you from the uncomfortable realities
Yes.
sometimes that can just be so
Yes.
raw.
Yes.
When it's
I mean,
just
I don't think we would have had this conversation if the camera was not there, you know?
gave you a purpose, it gave maybe your mother a purpose to say, okay,
Yeah.
this is my excuse.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. That's why I think like camera is a bit of a therapy, right? The camera, like, and this whole personal journey is kind of therapeutic, right? It's a therapeutic journey that you do to yourself. And you know, it's a, because it is a personal journey and you are looking at yourself for a big chunk of time. Things might come up that you don't want to deal with. It's good also, like the other advice would be to step away at times, because it is a personal journey and it is a personal documentary, and taking a step back and breathing and disconnecting from it is good for the mind.
That's good pieces of self-care advice when creating these
Yeah.
personal masterpieces. So at the end of the film, we feel like there's sort of a resolution, right? So we watch your mom go, this isn't important, you're giving it too importance, you shouldn't care this much, we don't care about these things, right? And there's at some points, I remember she makes good points, and it reminds me of other cultures when we talk about different things. But at the end, there's a part where there's sort of a resolution where you say something to the effect that, you know, your mom has gone through, maybe perhaps it's not that big of a deal to her because she's gone through worse things in life, right? Or there's
Yeah.
bigger things to her that she pays attention to, and sort of it gives it that resolution. Or when, you know, you speak to your stepdaughter about
Right.
the first period.
Right.
So my question to you is, are these resolutions that you came into this process um sort of like knowing about, or were they new as as you did these interviews and you spoke to them? Did it happen naturally, or was it something that you portrayed on camera as obviously
No, I think it just happened by magic. I think it happened at the end, you know, at the end of like the edit. And even that, like that like desert thing, like that was like it last, like that was like after me having filmed most of the thing. And we were going to the desert with for Christmas, actually. We spent Christmas in the desert. And I realized like, oh my God, it's the full moon. I'm bleeding. It's like Christmas. I'm like, and like nobody cared.
magic? Like, we don't care.
Like, you know what I mean? And I thought, oh my, and I was just filming, like I was just doing a home movie at that point, right? And I don't know why I decided to ask that question, but like, you know, the intention at one point, like when I was editing, was for me to make a film to change the narrative. And I wanted to change the narrative for my daughter, for my stepdaughter around period, because I think they are entitled to have a different narrative around periods. Like, you know, in the 21st century, I think girls and women should talk about periods differently. And I thought that was like, if that was my initial intention. I didn't know that I would be able to forgive my mother at the end. Actually, I never linked the war to my mother's way of dealing with period, right? The Lebanese civil war. I didn't know to which effect it had on her menstruation. And I think that connection, which happened while we were filming, made me realize that, oh my God, yeah, of course she doesn't care about period. Like, of course, there are more important things in life. Of course, that for her, it's beyond her understanding why it was such a big deal for me. Like, you know, I'm like this princess who was lucky enough to live in security without having to worry about whether I'm going to live or die the next day. So I had the space to be all traumatized about my period. She was living not actual, because, you know, I was told not to dismay my own trauma, but she was living a different kind of trauma, which was, I think, took a bigger chunk of her life. And that's why the period trauma was not so present. And that's why it was something that we, like, you know, we just, my mother says, we have all death to sleep and all life to live. And period will not stop her from living her life fully. Like,
Before we finish this beautiful interview, I really love that film. I think it's so impactful and so necessary. So thank you for creating it. What's the one thing that you hope when people watch this film that they get?
I hope it makes them talk about periods. Like, I think the whole point of the film is to open conversations about period, about even people sharing their own experience about their first period, because most of the time women don't, like, they don't really talk about that first experience. So ideally this film should be a trigger to dialogue, right? To open dialogue, and through dialogue and shared experiences we gain knowledge and we get more empowered, right? So that's kind of the direction that I would hope for, right? To empower young girls and women, and to look at their period differently somehow.
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And right after this interview, people will have the opportunity to watch your film, I Bleed. And if there's any other call to action you have for them.
I mean, they can always get in touch with me if they want to share their first period story. Because I did a website where I have like first period stories. I'm doing a pad art collection and a first period collection.
Beautiful. Okay, so if you want to share your first period story, I-bleed.com to get in touch with Leah. Enjoy the film. I hope you enjoyed as much as I have. And thank you for tuning in to our interview series.
Dirty is the word that comes to mind. Silence or quiet or shh.
Definitely all negative words. It's painful. It's almost traumatizing every month.
Basically, you were just supposed to kind of not talk about it. That was, I think, the most frustrating.
I thought it was something abnormal and something is wrong with me,
I honestly thought I was dying.
I think maybe my mother didn't handle it properly.
I guess it's just been passed through the generations that people don't see it as just a very natural part of being a woman.
Je me rappelle, j'avais pas dit à mon frère, donc je cachais les serviettes dans des Kleenex.
فجأة لازم أنا أشتغل كروشيه وكانفا، ممنوع ألعب مع الصبيان، ولأني بنت وكرهت أني بنت حرموني من كل شيء.
I felt like I had officially become a second-class citizen. Once a month, for the rest of my life, I will have to deal with some superpowers.
I think amongst Indians, especially Indian men, they see women as being dirty during this time of the month. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions.
I didn't want to become a woman. I didn't want my body to change. I didn't want to get hips. I didn't want to get tits. And I don't know, I had the feeling that that moment where I got my first period was gonna change something in me forever, that something was gonna be broken. I don't know why, I just had that feeling. And the AC goes on. So this is what PMS looks like. Questioning your whole life. Wanting to break everything. And feeling that you're gonna explode. I feel I'm gonna explode. Can't fucking handle anything. I'm smoking like a motherfucker. My breasts are gonna pop. I have had very strong urges to leave Jordy. I feel extremely emotional. I feel fat. I feel lethargic. I feel angry. And I feel like I'm boiling, actually. That's what I feel like. And that I need to get to work and I'm unable to get to work. So I need to get to work now. like really the feeling of like is the feeling of a balloon that's about to pop. Like anything could trigger me popping right now.
I don't clearly remember my first kiss. I don't remember the first time I had sex, but I do have such a clear, vivid memory of my first period. And since then, periods have been a huge part of my life. Periods equate to pills, pads, PMS, pain, and sending crazy messages to my husband, Jordy, who witnesses it all.
Jordy, what do you feel happens to me when I'm PMSing?
I'm scared. I cannot answer this.
Why? Oh my god. What does PMSing mean?
Fighting. No logic. Tension. Shouting. That's it.
I wanted to learn more, to understand more. I ordered every single book that I could find online that talked about periods. I read plenty, watched plenty. And then I came across an author who I felt connected to, Chris Bobel.
Is that menstruation in a lot of ways is a foil to femininity. It is evidence that we are of our animal body, our body that operates on its own schedule, that can be messy, that can be unruly, that can leak, and that doesn't map onto what it means to be a proper feminine woman, right? Which is contained and disciplined and tidy and discreet, and every hair is in place. And what the project of femininity really is a project. It really is a constant struggle against the body to keep it contained and hairless, and so menstruation in some ways violates that, and so we really have to work very, very hard to police it, to discipline it, to keep it in check.
Ain't nobody's business. Introducing Ain't nobody's business. New Tampax compact tampons.
If you could change one thing about your maxi days, aside from not having them, wouldn't you just like them to be cleaner? Well, say hello to cleaner days with new stay-free silhouettes.
So in order to be a good menstruating body, we need to portray no evidence of menstruation. We need to manage menstruation so that there's no blood seen and there's no really discussion of menstruation itself. And I think that's the hand of patriarchy, the invisible hand of patriarchy. I think it's locked in the hand of capitalism, whereby the body gets seen as a problem to be solved through engagement with consumer culture.
Hello and welcome to my channel. These are all your period essentials. So I use all these products whenever I have my period, and right now I am menstruating. So these products range between products I use for hygiene and products I use to manage the pain. The first one I use is Always Cotton Soft. That one I use on a daily basis when my period is kind of flowing, just started, not really. Then I use the Always Night Maxi Thick, Super Plus if I have to exercise. This is like the drug that is like magic. Now you might wonder how much all this might cost. So we're gonna do the math together, okay? I have all the prices, I have my paper to write the numbers, and I have my calculator to calculate the numbers. So the Always one, this one, is 1860 dirhams. This one, the Always Night, is 1850. And your total is 413.75. That's in dirhams. In dollars, that equates to divided by $112. And taking into account that we women menstruate around 460 times in our lifetime, let's multiply this by 460 times.
That's $51,000, 718. $51,000, 718. That's a lot of money. Thank you for watching Period Essentials. I hope this was helpful. See you next time. What should I focus on, for example?
On your career, on your studies, on your daughter, on your husband, on your...
On your husband the most.
Yes.
Shut up, Jordy.
Of course.
But I am focused on
لا
everything.
بس يعني your body فلقتينا of your body. This is not normal, Leah. This is not normal.
But a lot of people have this issues.
They are mentally retarded, and you want to be like them? ما حلو.
But usually this comes up when I'm gonna get my period. So now I'm PMS.
Every 15 days you want to PMS?
Yeah.
But why do you think I have issues like that?
ما بعرف. You give it too much importance.
But I can't control it.
لا, you should control it. Leah, أنت عندك volonté.
But même avec ça, j'ai pas la volonté.
Voilà, tu as la volonté. Tu as la volonté de faire beaucoup de choses.
But I think maybe it's hormonal. You don't.
لا أنت عم بتحطي براسك.
أنت ما بتحسي حالك ناصحة قبل ما كنت
ما فرقانة معي. اوكي ناصحة. Je m'aime, je me trouve très belle comme ça et j'ai beaucoup de succès. Je n'ai pas de complexe ni avec ta poitrine, ni ma taille, ni avec ma grandeur.
ولا مرة؟
لا, je m'accepte maman, je m'accepte, je suis bien comme je suis.
طب ليه أنا عندي هالمشكلة؟
ما بعرف. Why you have هيك كل وقت إنه you want to kill yourself for
I am
sports?
PMSing.
You start PMSing on the 25th. It's here. So don't scare me.
But we're almost at 26th though.
25th and we're not.
Yeah. 25th is her period date.
No, I get my period. You know when I get my period?
25th is her PMS.
No, you know when I get my period? On the day I travel.
On the which day?
The 30th.
Oof. 5 days PMSing?
No, sometimes it's 2 weeks.
Sometimes it's the whole month.
الله ايه. ليه يا ماما والله لازم تكبري عقلك. هلا وين الحفلة؟
بالأليانس فرانسيز.
ايه بس وين بالاوديتوريوم؟
I guess so. وين بدك
بس فتحتها برناديت.
ليه؟
سبقت لي فورمي.
While researching the topic of the menstrual taboo, many articles seems to refer to religion as the main cause behind it. So I decided to interview religious figures to understand the impact of religion on our current views on periods. I interviewed a rabbi, an imam, and a priest. I wanted to know how these religions define menstruation.
Menstruation is a normal procedure or process. There is no special place or role menstruation plays in our religion anymore. Although in the past, of course, influenced by Judaism and the different rules and laws which exist in the Old Testament, also in Christianity we have had in older days some restrictions in regard of menstruation or in regard of giving birth to a child, but all these regulations and rules disappeared in modern times.
Judaism does not celebrate a woman's menstrual cycle, and there's a reason for it, because it's considered very private. It's considered so private that the rabbis went a stage further in the Talmud and said that not only should there be no physical contact during her menstrual period, but to protect her privacy, other than her husband, there should be no touching at all. Now, why would they do that? And the reason they're doing that is not to embarrass the woman. If I shake hands or hug just a woman, and then all of a sudden I don't do that when I meet them because I know she's in her cycle, it brings to the forefront and it tells everybody, oh, she must be having her period. And it could cause embarrassment. So we don't do that.
عندما أتى رجل إلى النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام يسأله عن موضوع الحيض عند المرأة، فنزل قول الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم: ويسألونك عن المحيض قل هو أذى فاعتزلوا النساء في المحيض. قال العلماء: ما وصف دم المحيض كما وصف بالقرآن الكريم بالأذى؟ قالوا إنه أصعب بمعنى أشد ضررا من الزرنيخ، من اليود، الأشياء المسببة إلى الموت المباشر، فقالوا عنه أذى. سبحان الله، أتى الإسلام لينقي هذا الأمر، أنه جعله هذا الأمر جعله بموضع النجاسة. الرجل بالنسبة للمرأة له كل شيء بالمرأة حتى في حالة الحيض، سوى أن يتجنب هذا الموضع كما ذكرنا، وله ما فوق الإزار بكامل جسد المرأة.
I never really thought of the huge impact patriarchy has on our menstruation. We, men and women, have been conditioned to view the menstrual cycle as something dirty, and we have internalized that. I'm not religious. I might have been baptized as a child, but we never really practiced our faith. But actually, listening to these men, I realized that this is beyond practice or faith or spoken words. I understand why women today have a hard time accepting this vision. I myself am appalled by the idea that men have dictated for years and still dictate how I deal with my body. So I decided to delve into an alternative world, and I was amazed to meet women who were rebelling against patriarchal capitalistic principles and creating their own connection and writing their own stories about their cycle. Women who paint with their blood, who reconnect to their feminine figures through movement, women who paint their womb, women who give back their blood to the earth, women who write to their blood. I even participated in some of the workshops and wrote a poem to my periods. I learned new ways to look at my cycle. And this one says, come with peace, love, and wisdom. Come and help me release what I no longer need in my life. I like my pad. And through this somewhat underground society, I was put in touch with Vanessa, a keeper of women's secret, who has dedicated the past 10 years of her life helping women reconnect to their cycle. I wanted to know what led her into this field.
What I found on my journey was that I was in extreme pain. I had endometriosis, and they wanted to remove my womb, or partial hysterectomy. And I was faced with that, and my initial reaction was, yeah, get rid of it, hate it, and then I don't have to have it anymore. And it was only when I came home from the doctor and said to my husband, partial hysterectomy, and he was like, yeah, go for it. And I was like, what? This womb has given you 4 babies. How could you just say remove it? And so suddenly there was part of me that was defending my womb, even though just half an hour before, and I was doing exactly what he was saying, And then what happened was I literally opened a can of worms, literally by, and realized, oh my God, I hate my blood. I hate my period. I hate the inconvenience of it. And I have hated it ever since I was 13 from my first blood. And my mother, bless her, she used to call it the curse. And so the curse would visit every month. And it was a curse because I called it a curse. So immediately when I was looking for ways of healing, I changed the name from curse to moon time. Now I call it my red tent time. And now, years on, I love my period. I love it because I love my cycle. I love how clever my body is. She goes through these cycles, and you know, when I bleed, I take time out. And then if I take that time for me and I release and let go, not just the blood, but the emotions, the spiritual stuff, you know, it's almost like a mini death. Then I die, and then I rebirth. And so it's just honoring this cycle is so empowering.
Vanessa invited me to attend her Reclaim Reason and Ritual workshop, a workshop she holds over the period of a month, claiming to help women reconnect with their secret essence and heal core feminine wounds.
I'm heading to this event where you kind of reconnect with your menstruation. There's a part of me that feels like a lot of this is like bullshit, and there's another part of me that's interested in knowing where this goes. I'm kind of interested to see if my relationship with my menstruation is going to change or not. But there's so many of these events now that you kind of don't know what is real and what is not real. So that's it. I'm ready. I have my mat. They also asked me to bring a picture of like the first time, like the age, so this is me. You know. And I think that's the day, like when I got my period actually. We were at the desert. So I'm gonna relive that moment. So let's see. Maybe this will put me more in touch with the person that I am. The person I'm supposed to be. But that's it.
With me tonight, and the idea, the hope, the prayer is that this circle holds you and nourishes you and gives you exactly what you need right now, no more, no less. I'm just an invitation for you to dream and to imagine and to remember. The idea of remembering is that sometimes we don't recall our first blood, we don't recall that time, or it was fairly kind of like invisible, you know, nobody took, or maybe it was hugely embarrassing, and you can receive kind of an idea of what you need, what she needs, or what she needed then. Just share your story. You can share either how you felt in your body, what the first blood, I mean predominantly what the first blood was like, how people were around you, how you would like to be different. Maybe to this bit, let's start with what happened. What happened for you, your experience of your first blood, and share that. And then in that process of sharing, we do it in such a way that is really healing, because we do it in partners, and the person that was listening is going to ask permission to say, can I share your story with the circle? I need to put a few more pants on because we need to keep it in place. So kind of put on pants, and then slide it, and then I'm waking up.
So she felt like it was a very tough experience for her, and she felt very disconnected from her body.
Knew about it, but didn't know about it. It was sort of this confusion hovering around what it was. Rebecca, can I tell your story?
Yes.
All right, so Rebecca got her first period when she was 13.
There's such a, it's just such a nourishment to that. There's a healing, and it works. And the women just, you know, we sit and we hold each other, and it's like some women are like, I just wish my mom had told me more, or I wish my mom had been there. And so suddenly we're sitting in circle, and you know, the person hugging you is suddenly your mother that you didn't have holding you at that point.
The workshop healed me somehow. My period started coming with no pain, no PMS. But beyond that, Hearing the story of my first period being told made me realize that the sacredness of my body was somehow violated on that day. My mother had never spoken to me about periods. It was not celebrated, not mentioned, yet when it happened to me, she shared the news with everyone without my consent, as if my body didn't really matter. And this led me to forget somehow the respect for my body. I had never spoken to my mother about my first period. It was time for me to talk to her to understand why she had reacted the way she had.
تتذكر الشيء أنت أول مرة طلع لي الرجل؟
أنت طلع لك الرجل أول مرة؟ لا.
لا أبداً؟ ما بتتذكري؟ كنا بالصحراء؟ يمكن ما قلت لك وقتها كنا بالصحراء.
لا ما بتذكر أبداً.
لا؟ طب بس أنت بتتذكري ما كنت أبداً حكيتيني عن الرجل. يعني بس أقولك إنه أنا أول مرة طلع لي الرجل comme vraiment c'était comme un gros traumatisme.
Oh,
ce qui était encore plus traumatisant لإلي إنه بتذكر قلت لك
ايه
وطلبت منك إنه قلت لك إنه بونسان إنه عم بقلك بس لإلك
ايه
وقررت تخبري كل الناس وصاروا كل الناس يحكوني إنه نيكول وجولي وتيتا يقولوا لي إنه يي صرت مرة.
ايه
ما بتتذكري؟
لا لا ما بتذكر بس انه بفهم ليش انه سي كيك شوز انه انتر فام كون بارتاج انه
ايه بس انه
انا انه مش انه شيء انتيم بدي خليه بس الي ما عم تخبريني عن سكري انتيم
بس سي رابور افيك مون كور نو
لانه انت بتحكي انه انت بتستوعب الاشياء بشكل وانا بستوعب انه شفتي حتى مع الراجل تبعيتي انا ما كنت عم بعطيها الاهميه.
ايه بس سوف يمكن لإلي كان شيء مهم وعم خبرك
يمكن يمكن بس انه انا بالنسبه إلي انه كان عندي غير بيرسبسيون انه بالعكس كنت مبسوطه فيكي انه صرتي tu es devenue une femme عرفتي وانه je voulais partager cette nouvelle avec les personnes que j'aime qui sont les plus proches اللي هن امي واخواتي.
بس لا اقولك حسيت حالي هالقد انه مستحيه comme humiliée comme j'avais vraiment un sens d'humiliation que j'ai porté انه انا بحس انه يمكن الرجل صار comme un rappel douloureux chaque mois يمكن لأن إنه صار أول شيء إنه ما حدا قال لي إنه عرفت أنا من الرجل من نورة لأن كان أول وحدة بس إنه ما فكرت إنه أنا رح تجيني وأنت ولا مرة حكيتيني فيها تتذكر أنت ولا مرة قلتي لي شيء عن الرجل ولا مرة خبرتيني.
أي عمر إجتي؟
12 سنة. j'avais 12 ans.
ما يعني ما عندي ما بتذكر لا يمكن عم جرب تفكر انه ليش ما حكيتك.
اسكو انت كنت شيء انه تابو لإلك يمكن؟
لا يعني مش مثل امي.
غريب بس بتعرفي عن جد كتير غريب لأن وقتها طلع لي الرجل فريمون حسيت انه تو دان كو انه صرت مرة هيك حسيت انه تو دان كو وصار même ton regard لأن يمكن جمعة و 2 semaines après إنه قلت لي ليه يعني لازم صار بتذكر لا قلت لي البس سوتيان إنه لازم صار تلبسي سوتيان كان لابسة تيشيرت أخضر وقلت لي كان في ناس قاعدين إنه يمكن بابي أم شي بس vraiment ça m'avait vraiment ما بعرف ليه إنه هالقد ça m'a traumatisée.
Tu n'étais pas contente de devenir femme?
Non, pas du tout. Je voulais rester un enfant.
أنا بالعكس وقت أنا أجت انبسطت إنه رح تصير كبيرة.
بس أنا أبداً
أخذتها مثل ما أنا أخذتها، يعني مثل ما أنا كنت فكر إنه كنت انبسط.
فريمون الإحساس اللي كنت حس إنه بقرف.
لا مش بقرف، بس هو كلنا منفكر إنه هاي جاية مجية من جاية.
شو جية؟
المجية هي هيدي الراجل اسمها المجية.
هيك بيقولوا؟
ايه جاية من كلمة جاية.
بس انت كنت تحسي انه جاية؟
ايه
لاني
ايه اكيد لانه انه سي اسوسي تجوي تيابك، تعدي على الكنبية بتجويها، بتلبسي بنطلون بتبقحي، لانه كانت البروتكشن منا كتير افيكاس مثل هلا هالايام. بقى سوفون كنا نحس حالنا امباراسي بس يبين انه عنا دم وهيك.
Est-ce que tu penses que ta relation avec tes règles, tu trouves فيها comme quelque chose de négatif quelque part, a affecté ma relation avec mes règles inconsciemment ما بقول لك انه
اكيد لا اكيد لانه مين عندك بوجهك؟ امك.
Good morning. Dis bonjour à papa.
I became a mother on the 28th of June 2015 to a beautiful little girl called Ava.
Bonjour, Papa.
I read once that whatever we don't deal with within our life, we pass on to our children.
Ava.
It was time for me to deal and dig deeper into this period issue. I decided to travel to Lebanon, the country of my birth, the country where my mother lived the first 21 years of her life. Although my parents had left Lebanon many moons ago because of the civil war, they always made it a point that we spend parts of our summer taking in the beautiful Mediterranean sun and breeze. I was now doing the same with my daughter.
لا هيدا تليفون غشي هلا بدك شو هيدا.
I asked my dad to get out all the tapes from our youth.
HDMI 3.
Growing up, my father, an avid photographer, spent hours on end capturing moments of our life on tape. My parents got married when my mom was 3 months shy of turning 21. The war in Lebanon had started 6 years back. I wonder what would make people under such circumstances get married, celebrate love when life itself can't be celebrated. They probably had hoped to live a long, happy, peaceful life in Lebanon, but because of the war, they moved to Saudi Arabia, where my mom got pregnant. She once told me that when she found out that she was pregnant, she was feeling so guilty to call her parents to tell them that she was carrying life as they were stuck in Lebanon fighting for theirs. When I look at her, I see a child taking care of a child.
Leah.
بصور خلص.
طب اوكي، طب قولوا لي كيف تتذكروني انا وصغيره؟
كنت very happy baby.
ايه
ضلك تضحكي، ضلك مبسوطة.
تحبي تغني. بلشت تتغيري لما
à l'âge de 13 ans.
ايه à l'âge de 12 ans 13 ans.
كيف تغيرت؟
تغيرتي بلشتي ترسمي على الحيطان عندك والازاز بالاوضه. بيانتو فريدوم، بيانتو ما ليبرتي، مثل اكنك نحن حابسينك كنا.
ما بتقولي انه يمكن هاي الهرمون؟
ايه بروبابل، ما بعرف.
يمكن كمان سي هرمونال. ايه.
That's me in the spot.
انه
انت بتتذكر الريك تبعولي؟
ايه بتذكر بتذكر وقتها قالت لي كوليت قال لها يو سي ريك ليا قلت لها فيري جود شو بدي اقول لها شو بدك اقول لها
Le profil.
يعني pour moi c'était quelque chose de normal dans le cycle de la vie. Ça doit arriver aux femmes un jour ou l'autre يعني.
طب انت ما كنت مامي تعمل PMS؟ ما كنت تزعجك؟
ما كانت انت كنت PMSing؟ لا ما كانت PMS.
ما كنت تحس
هنية انا
لا اجمالا c'est une femme très هيك
égale à elle-même.
Égale à elle-même, oui.
Même quand j'avais mes règles, je n'en faisais pas de soucis يعني.
ما هو حسب كل وحدة حسب كل وحدة تو ديبون دو لا بيرسون.
إذا عاملين مشروع بحر مش رح أقول له يي لا ما بدي أروح على البحر لأنه
البحر أهم مش بتقعد تعمل هيك وبتعصب I'm PMSing مثل ناس بنعرفهم مش هيك؟
شو أنا عم تحكي عني؟
مين قولك؟ بس هو ما في شك وقت ما تجي تكون في بيريد عند المرأة الهاي أكيد طبعها بيتغير تصرفها بيتغير.
أنا كنت تحس كمان مش
لا أكيد كان يوجعني بطني
بحس أكيد شو لك يعني.
أوقات كان يوجعني ظهري في فترة صار يوجعني
بس
ظهري.
أنا من الناس اللي بيحبوا يتجنبوا.
كيف بتعرف تكون شفت
بتلفن للجارة بسألها شو قولي كيف بعرف.
Tu penses que ton éducation religieuse a joué un rôle dans ta sexualité et dans ta relation avec tes règles?
ايه bien sûr ايه اكيد.
وانا كمان
انه كل هدول الاشياء ما مفروض لا نحكي عنه وما انه c'était un sujet مش tabou بس انه un sujet qu'on ne discute pas aussi ouvertement.
انت tu peux pas être là انت منك
My mother grew up going to a nun school. Her family came from a middle-class Christian family from West Beirut and had a strong attachment to the religion as a cultural identity. What role did her education and culture have in her relationship with her periods? What role did her mother play?
أنا أول شيء تالت بنت، دايماً تالت بنت مش مستحبة لأنه إنه دايماً بحبوا بالميليو تبعنا بحب يجون صبي إنه على أساس صبي بيقدر يساعدهم بيكبر بيحمل اسم العائلة وهيك. أنا هي الماما كانت تقلي أول ما خلقت إنه كانت بدها تكبني إنه ما بدها ياني j'étais pas l'enfant شو بيقولوا دون تريفي أو هيك. بس أول ما شفتني إنه اللي خلصني لأنه كنت شقرة وعيوني هيك عم بيضووا بقى هالشي قال إنه شفع فيي. حست إنه مثل هيدا it's a gift from God pour compenser pour ses peines. ما كانت كتير عندها وقت إلي خصيصاً إلي لأنه كان الأفضلية لأختي الكبيرة لجولي. دايماً الكبيرة بيحبوا يحطوها بالواجهة والصغيرة إنه سافا بيمشي الحال. Ma mère, elle a eu beaucoup de circonstances difficiles, ce qui l'a rendue plus... Elle intériorisait ses soucis, elle intériorisait... يعني ما كانت تحكي عن اشياء معنا.
Quel rôle ta mère a joué in your womanhood, in your journey to womanhood? Did she have a role? Maybe she didn't, but did she have a role? Maybe she didn't, maybe because she herself didn't feel comfortable in her womanhood.
يمكن يمكن.
You know?
كنا نركز على الكوتي رومانتيك تبع الاشياء beaucoup plus que le côté sexuel.
Donc les règles sont sexuelles?
ايه بفتكر ايه يعني ça a rapport avec
les organes génitaux وهيك ما كنا كتير نحكي فيهم.
أو ليك يمكن لأن c'était aussi durant la période de guerre إنه كان عنده الناس أشياء أهم يمكن.
probablement إيه on avait d'autres soucis. يعني أنا بلشت الحرب كان عمري 14 سنة. On avait le souci de survivre, on avait le souci de trouver de la nourriture, on avait le souci de où s'enfuir, où se protéger, où dormir pour être loin des bombes. بس ما بتذكر شيء عن الرجل. ما بعرف.
If my mom couldn't remember, then maybe her sister could. My mom and her sister Nicole grew up inseparable. She is one of the closest persons to my mom and the one that knows her best.
Tu as vu les cèdres? Les cèdres du Liban, tu as vu? Voilà les arbres, on appelle ça les cèdres. Les cèdres du Liban.
ما تكذبي.
لا مش مكذب بدك اتذكر.
أنا أضرب منك.
يعني بتذكر هيك فاجمون.
ليه شو بتتذكري
بلشتي؟
ايه.
يعني بتذكر النهار اللي I had my period أول مرة. إيه هاي بتذكرها.
شو بتتذكري؟
بتذكر إنه كنا ببيت الجبل وبعدين بالخنشارة إيه. وإنه وقت شفت إنه إجا دم صار في دم ما فهمت أول شيء لأنه ما عرفت ما كان حدا محضرني يعني للقصة تماما. لا الماما كانت تستحي ما كنا نحكي أبدا ما كان في the modern sex education اللي إنه بيعلموا الأولاد مثل ما مثلا هلا مع بنتي إنه بالمدرسة بيحضروها ما كنا نحكي كتير يعني c'était un sujet tabou. بس لأنه في association بين الرجل وبين البروكرياسيون والانتركورس sexual intercourse يعني.
هون بالميدل ايست بفتكر وقت الوحده بتجي الرجل يعني صارت خرج تتجوز.
يعني لو بلبنان؟
ايه.
ايه بس كمان اذا les règles sont liées à انه au fait que tu en tant que femme tu peux porter des enfants ما بتحسوا انه كان لازم امكم تقلكم انه هلا انتبهوا يمكن تحبوا؟
لا كانوا يقولوا لنا ديانا مثلا اكثر وحده كانت تقلنا انه لهون وبس انه on peut avoir des relations لهون وبس انه يمكن ي pas de toucher او هيك انه كان c'était ouvertement déclaré انه il faut pas qu'il y ait une relation plus
avancée. إيه لا أكيد إنه we were aware.
بس les choses ont vraiment évolué depuis notre temps لأيامكم أنتم إنه هلا الأولاد صاروا beaucoup plus épanouis وبيسألوا أكثر. هلا مثلا أنا بشوف إيفا مثلا كيف تسأل ليا أسئلة إنه نحن ما كنا نسأل هالأسئلة.
Et c'est quoi les règles?
Du sang.
Qui coule?
Qui coule.
Où il coule?
Couche.
Dans la couche? Est-ce que toi tu as tes règles?
Non.
Et quand tu penses tu vas avoir les règles alors?
Quand je serai une maman.
Quand tu seras une maman? Est-ce que tu as hâte d'avoir tes règles?
Oui.
Pourquoi?
Parce que mon petit enfant, il va choisir le meilleur.
نشرب القهوة.
I wish my grandmother was still alive. She was beautiful, and I had a very close relationship with her. I sometimes see her through my daughter, through my mom, through myself. I spent a lot of time filming with her and talking to her. We talked about everything. I thought I knew everything about her.
بيجي لهون كمان أوقات بهرب من العالم.
But I found out a year ago about a secret family affair that my grandmother had lived as a young girl, which I thought might have played a role in her aversion around the subject of periods and sex. Only Jana, the cousin of my mother, who had a very close relationship with my grandmother, the holder of our family secret, would be able to answer me without having me to guess, without subtext or in between the lines.
تتذكري انت تيتا حكيتك شيء عن اول الغيق؟ بتعرفي كيف اول مرة تبعنا الغيق؟
طنط ليلى لا بس امبارح خصوصي كرمالك سألت الماما. Elles étaient réglées à presque 11-12 ans. Ou tante Leila, j'étais plus fort. Un peu plus fort que maman. Maman n'a rien senti du tout. Parce que tante Leila, elle a eu beaucoup de mal. Et c'était un peu fort. هلا هن كانوا معهم خبر تيتا مخبرتهم. ايه مشان هيك ما خافوا اثنينهم. ناطرينا خاصة الماما ناطرتها كثير عملها منيح. نحن كلنا جينيراسيون كانوا يخبرونا القصة.
بس كيف مامي قالت لي باغ اكزومبل انه هي اما ما قالت لها او لك يمكن لان خافوا يمكن من انه من قصة ستي يمكن
قصة ستيك
ايه او لك مشان هيك
بتعرفيها
انه هيك مامي خبرتني
انا حتى مش سائلة امك اذا بتعرف انا انه هذا من اسرار الام بتعطيني اياهم. اجا نون بارل جامي ا بيرسون.
وانه ما حكيت يعني
ما بتنحكى هيك قصة ابدا.
لا بس ما حكيت ابن عن الغايب، ما خبرت مامي ولا نيكول.
ما بدها تفتح الحديث مثل ما قلتي. كل هالحديث بسمها.
او لك لو الغايب لانه اسكلا اسوسي لي غايب.
لا tout ce qui est féminin بده يكون. tous les problèmes de la femme هيدا اللي بده يكون صار فيها وقتها.
ومشان هيك بطلت تحكي ما قالت لهم؟
ما بدها تفتح هيك حديث ما بيعجبها.
I wanted to understand more the environment where my mom and my aunt grew up. So I decided to drive down memory lane and ask them to take me to the house where they spent their childhood. The house where they got their first period. The house where it all began.
قد ايه مرة تبرميه؟
6.
شوف أي مفتاح هيدا يمكن. تنفتح الشباك المطبخ شوي. مش هلا تشرب. لا سوا بس كله ذكريات.
هاي أوضة جدو؟
هاي أوضة البابا فيها كتب أخذتهم.
هاي كان أوضتكم؟
هاي كانت أوضتنا نحن وصغار.
انتوا ثلاثة تناموا هون؟
ايه وكان يبقى في كنبة هونيك لستة زبايدة كانت تنام.
يعني 4 يناموا بهالأوضة؟
ايه فوالا.
وهون كانوا تشوفوا الحرب من هون؟
ايه لبوجنا النبعة.
ايه انه كنتوا تسمعوا
كانوا يعيطوا لبعضهم ويسبوا لبعضهم من النبعة هونيك.
ايه
والجعتاوي ورانا بتتذكري وين قلت لك
إيه
الدرج هونيك كانوا كتائب والقوات وما بعرف شو وخبطوا بعضهم.
بس انه مش هي خطرة كانت الأوضة؟
بلا كانت كتير خطرة. ما مرة أول الحرب كنت أنا نايمة هون وطلع انفجار ووقع الإزاز كله
عليكم؟
ايه.
ما انصبتوا؟
لا ما صارنا شيء. بعدين مرة أنا وصغيرة كنا كانت الماما عم تشرب قهوة عند طنط أنا وأنا لحقتها عم بقطع على الطريق. ما بعرف إذا مخبرتك إياها القصة.
لا.
عم بقطع على الطريق تروح عند طنط أنا وكانوا لاقطين واحد فلسطيني ما بعرف شو يعني ان كادافر ورابطينه بحبلة وجيب عم بيشرحطوا من أول الطريق لآخر الشارع وأنا عم بقطع. يعني مرقت الجيب افتكرت انه صار فيني اقطع يعني جالي بيتيني لو كادافر وبلشت صرخ وبعدني لهلا جاي لها شيف دكتور. صاروا يحرقوني بالسيجاره برقبتي قلت بقول الشوك حتى يعملوا لي كونتر شوك.
قد ايه كان عمرك؟
كنت عمري 13 سنة 14. هي الحرب بلشت 14 سنة كان عمري. بتذكر قعدنا على الدرج هونيك عند يناية الطن.
ايه انه شو تيتا سمعتك من
ما بلشت صرخ صرت ولول. ايه ساعة بس.
Ça a passé. Tout passe. Everything passes. That's how my mother dealt with trauma following the footsteps of her mother. Letting go of things that scar us as a way to move forward in life. I understand now why my mother couldn't comprehend me making such a big deal out of my periods. She had gone through much worse, and yet still found it in her to let go.
I know you belong to somebody new, but tonight you belong to me. I know you belong to somebody new, but tonight you belong to me.
This summer, my stepdaughter Sophia got her first period, and it was now my turn to play a role in a girl's entrance to womanhood.
I sit down? Yeah. The first period, I had like a bit of uncomfortable, so then I went to the bathroom and I literally thought I pooped myself, and I asked Leah. Leah is my stepmom and actually the one who's filming this, and she said, "Yep, that's it, and you have your period." So the first time that I heard that, I couldn't believe it. I thought to myself like, these 2 years I wanted this day to come, and finally, it's this day. I'm entering the women's club, and I'm gonna be part of it like loads of years, from this day till I don't know when.
So did you feel like kind of like you were saying bye to your childhood?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Hi. Hi, Sophia.
Hi.
Hi, Eva. Hi, Thomas. Hi, Mommy.
You can get this one.
So I think this time is a rebirth for me, because I'm getting my period in the desert. Wow. And it's a dark moon.
You can do live painting.
And the first time I got my period was when I was in the desert. So I think it's a cycle turn for me.
When you finish, put this so we make Turkish coffee.
Does anybody care?
Nobody cares about your period.
I feel I'm turning a cycle. Jordy, do you care? Or you're just worried?
I'm just focused on my egg. Not your eggs. Right now.
And Manny?
What?
You think I'm turning a cycle?
No.
Why?
You're normal.
No, but turning a cycle. Like the first time I got my period was in the desert. And now I have my period and we're in the desert.
Nice.
And it's Christmas. And it's a dark moon. So I'm supposed to go inward.
And your husband is cooking eggs. It's just all aligned.
Yes. What a coincidence.
Yeah. I'm doing the last one.
Maybe I'm letting go of something.
You're what?
I'm letting go of something.
Hopefully. Hopefully. Leah, your first period got it in the desert?
Yes, you don't remember that I told you? Why did we have this conversation if you can't even remember?
Yeah?
I am an old lady.
Mommy, you're not old. But no, it's absurd that you didn't remember, so I had to tell you, and now you don't remember?
Hala, you just said it.
No, I told you before.
I forgot.
Carry their mother's tale into the next generation. And the more they know about their mother's life, the stronger they are. Today, I feel stronger. I feel that I broke a cycle to pave a new path for my daughter's cycle. One more beautiful, more transparent, more positive, knowing that one day she might also need to forgive me.